Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Susan Inouye joining us. Susan is an executive coach, author of Leadership's Perfect Storm, and co-founder of Sawubona Leadership. With a 2-decade career helping transform over 600 companies, she's renowned for integrating millennial insights into corporate strategy. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here with you.
Excellent. So, Susan, before we get started, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Sure. I think the theme that's always permeated my life has been I've always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And it started when I was young, volunteering at the missions. And then it segued into me discovering the transformative power of films to change lives. And I eventually ended up in Los Angeles. I was on scholarship to the University of Southern California. I graduated with honors with a bachelor's in mathematics, a minor in music. And then several years later, I entered a competition at the American Film Institute through the Directing Workshop for Women. And against all odds, I was one of a small select group of women that was awarded a $5,000 grant to do a 30-minute short. And my film Solo, it went to festivals, it won awards, and I eventually ended up in the office of Kathleen Kennedy, who loved the film, who was then the assistant to Steven Spielberg. And I thought my life would change forever. And it did, but not in the way I anticipated. I couldn't get a job as a first-time director. And so finally, a TV producer who knew me said to me, Susan, it's so much easier to hire first-time men directors than women. And I was pissed. But I realized that if I was going to help others transform their lives, it started with me transforming my own. And so I started to study deeply and fiercely with teachers from the world of doing to teachers to the world of being. And one day, business colleague of mine, she came up to me and she said, Susan, I've seen the positive transformation in you. I want you to coach me. I'm starting my own business. Now, Andy, back then coaching wasn't popular,
Right.
But she was persistent. And I said, okay. So I coached her. She made her first million in her first year. And she looked at me and said, Susan, this is how you're going to make a difference in people's lives. And so I've just been very fortunate. I've been able to work with over 600 companies in 40 industries, everything from Fortune 500 companies to small businesses. And the past 13 years, I have been helping leaders better engage their younger people through Sawubona Leadership. And the results for my clients have been creating these cultures of belonging that have resulted in an increase in productivity, revenue, and profitability, sometimes by 50% in only 6 months.
That's fantastic. I'm still kind of stuck on your mathematics major and a music minor. Did I get that right?
Yeah, well, you're a musician, so math and music are very aligned.
They go hand in hand with one another, but so many people don't know that. They think, I'm a music person, so therefore I'm not a math person. I'm like, you're a music person. You are a math person by definition.
All the math majors at USC were in the USC band.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Thank you for that lesson. Now, you talked about one accelerant in your career, that individual that came to you and said, hey, would you coach me? Is there any other kind of moments in your career that just put rocket boosters behind you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was meeting, and in fact, I know it was meeting Tony LaRae, who is the founder and CEO of Youth Mentoring Connection. Tony became a mentor to me. He literally transformed my life and the way that I coach and work with organizations. And he was introduced to me by an executive client of mine at a time when I was getting these calls from executives, very frustrated and puzzled by their millennial generation. And they'd say things like, I mean, Susan, who would leave their job without another one to go to? And so there was so much pain and suffering between generations that I had to find a method that was grounded in proven results. And so he took me to the ghettos of South Central Los Angeles. I met Tony. I found out he was a former CEO and a very successful business owner who sold his business. And over a decade ago, he started to transform the lives, thousands of inner city millennial youth through his mentoring programs with unprecedented results. And I got to tell you, what drew me in was the fact that he went into the community. He talked to these young people, saw what it would take to engage with them. And over the years, he created the gift-centered approach. And this approach was at the heart of the way he led, which he called Sawubona Leadership. And so I went to some mentoring sessions, and Andy, I was amazed. I mean, here was a community of people that were of all different generations, genders, ethnic backgrounds, and the deep connection that they had in the way they engaged each other that brought out the best in who they were. I said to Tony, I need you to mentor me because I need to take this into the corporate world because I saw a way of building cultures of belonging. And so he did. And over 13 years ago, I started to turn around companies and cultures now in a way that was long-term and sustainable.
Excellent.
And yeah, and today, Sawbona Leadership and the gift-centered approach is in over 30 countries. And it's the subject of my book, Leadership's Perfect Storm, which we were fortunate at the end of 2018 when we launched it. It hit the #1 Amazon bestseller in leadership and business management and sold all over the world.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
the word Sawbona, a lot of our listeners are not going to know what that means. What is Sawbona Leadership? What does it mean? And what makes it unique as compared to the literal sea of other leadership methods out there?
Yeah. So Sawbona is Zulu for I see you, as in seeing the whole person.
Mm.
And when we see and accept people for who they are, they see and accept us for who we are. And a different conversation begins to unfold. One where we're not lecturing to each other, but one where we're listening and learning from each other. And it's the leadership style that most millennials and Gen Zs gravitate for, because at the heart of their needs is the deep need to be seen and accepted for who they are. But Andy, I can tell you every generation wants this as well too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. What makes it different? Could I share a story of one of my clients? Because I think that would share how it's different. Would that be okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I'll call her Kathy. So Kathy was the director of IT, and she had a millennial, Jack, which was a tech rep working with her. And I was coaching the execs, and one day she came to me and she said, Susan, I need your help. I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to fire Jack at the end of this week. And he's not meeting his monthly quota of new customers served. And as we talked, and I was explaining to her about gifts, I said to her, Kathy, what is Jack's gifts? And she just looked at me, she goes, I don't know. And this is not uncommon because gifts are what we naturally bring into the world. It's just who we are. And so I remember reframing the question and saying, why did you hire him? And her eyes lit up. And she said, because he is not like the typical tech rep. He doesn't talk down to our customers in techie language. He gains rapport easy. They love him. They call him by name. He is outstanding in solving problems. And so all the tech reps come to him, and he's great with training them. I said, wow. She said, but I'm going to have to fire him. I said, just calm down. I said, let's step back and see a bigger picture. And I asked her, what is Jack's retention rate on his existing base? And she didn't know. And I said, can you find out? And she said, why? I said, because he might be bringing on less new customers, but retaining more. So she said, I'll find out. The next day she called me and she said, Susan, you'll never believe he is more profitable than any of my other reps because he is retaining more. I said, great. Buy some time with your boss and let's brainstorm. So we brainstormed. And my first question is, what is the gifts that are trying to come out in his bad behavior? And so she went on about his intelligent problem solving, rapport with his clients, generosity, coaching, training, all these things that he did really well. And I said, okay, how can we redirect these gifts so they better serve Jack, you, and the organization? And she came up with a really great idea. She said, why don't we create a training manual? He gives away all his secrets. And I said, and what if we take that training manual and we have him literally train the entire department? Mm. I said, but you're going to have to go to him and see if he's in on this. So she did. She acknowledged his gift. He was flattered. He said yes. And we did many other things, but bottom line, this is what happened. The company got a new training manual. Jack trained everybody, and productivity and retention went up across the board. Jack, in breaking down what he did so well, he now saw where he could be more effective and efficient, and now he was making his monthly quota of new customers served. They had 3 consecutive years of the highest retention rate of their customers, and Kathy was promoted from a director to a general manager. Yeah.
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's move on to your book,
Sure.
Leadership's Perfect Storm. When I think of a perfect storm, I think of a confluence of a lot of challenges coming together all at once, or a lot of opportunities coming together at once. What is the leadership perfect storm that you describe in the book?
Yeah. So there are 3 currents of this perfect storm, and they are the drivers behind why leaders must really change the way they lead. They must create a shift in the way they lead in order to thrive in this century. And in the book, I do describe what I call the 5 Sawbona Leaderships. But the 3 currents are staying ahead of the curve, millennials as the next generation of leaders, and the 4th Industrial Revolution. So staying ahead of the curve, I mean, and what's new today is outdated tomorrow.
Right.
And leaders can no longer be on the cutting edge. They have to redefine the edge. And that means coming up with innovative ideas that disrupt their industry before they get disrupted by an Uber coming out of left field. And most of my execs say, Susan, how can I do this with all the work that's piled on my desk? And I say, you can't. You have to have every single one of your people anticipating change. And you have to coach and you have to develop them into the leaders you need and want them to be. And millennials, they want to be those leaders as long as you don't lecture down to them. Mm. And the leaderships can help people do that. The next one, millennials is the next generation of leaders. We know today that millennials are in leadership roles. They are transitioning into executive roles. And they have many needs. But the 3 basic needs that keep echoing and are the same is they want to feel heard, they want to use their gifts, and they want to have meaning and purpose in their lives. But when I'm at conferences keynoting and I ask the audience of all different generations, how many of you want that too? Every hand goes up because it's not a generational need, it's a human need.
Yeah. And
so the leaderships can help people meet the needs of millennials and every generation.
Yeah, the generations that say no, that really doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to them because they were beaten up over and over again, saying that's not the way we work. Keep your head down, be quiet, do your job. maybe you'll get ahead, and instead you've got newer generations questioning that kind of attitude.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We used to suck it up.
Yeah. I have said that many times, and I have been told that many times.
Yeah. So
Not,
the third current is the fourth industrial revolution, and it's about AI,
yeah,
robots replacing people. And really the question becomes is how do we compete with robots? And what do we have that robots don't? And we're discovering that what makes us valuable and irreplaceable is not our intellect or intelligence of our head. It's the other innate intelligences, the intelligence of our heart and our body. This is our emotional and somatic intelligence that makes us valuable and irreplaceable. And so the leaderships can help us develop those other intelligences that are often overlooked and ignored. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for walking us through that. So your book's subtitle is What Millennials Are Teaching Us About Possibilities, Passion, and Purpose. Well, 7 years have transpired since the book's publication. A lot has happened. We've been through a pandemic. Millennials are now 7 years older than when you were first talking about this. They're definitely mid-career, as we were talking about. If you were to rewrite the book today, what would you be putting in the book that's not there currently? Has the perspective shifted at all?
Okay. I think what makes Sawbona Leadership so powerful, Andy, is that it is timeless.
Mm,
Everyone wants to be seen and accepted for who they are, no matter what generation, gender, ethnic background, because it is not a generational need, it's a human need. And so the basic principles of Sawbona are the constant. No matter what generational lens you look through, I just happen to write it through the lens of a millennial. Regarding millennials, the three basic needs to feel heard, use their gifts, and have meaning and purpose in their life have not changed. But what has changed for them is that now they're in leadership roles, management roles, and they're experiencing what their bosses experience when they enter the workplace.
yeah.
I have a lot of millennials that complain about Generation Z. They are the worst generation to work for, Susan. And I
Yeah.
kind of laugh because, just like you're laughing now, because I say to them, it sounds a lot like what was being complained about when your generation entered the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of laugh. And I said, so it's not about the generation. It's about the age that we're at when we enter the workforce.
Yeah.
I say to them, did you know that the brain is not fully developed in a girl until she is 26 and in a guy 25 and to a guy till 27? So they're working from the emotional part of their brain, not the logical side of their brain. And how can you take this knowledge I'm giving you and coach and develop them into the best version of themselves so that they become the leaders you need and want them to be?
Yeah.
And so it makes them stop and go, okay. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I was laughing so hard because it was I don't know 6 months or so ago. I did a piece on nobody wants to work anymore. All that nobody wants to work anymore. Well, you can go back in newspapers all the way back to the 1920s, where there are articles in various newspapers about how this new generation doesn't want to work anymore, and you can do the same thing in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. So it is a perennial complaint of everybody in the workforce that the people that are coming after them don't know what they're doing and they don't want to work anymore.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Well, Susan, we're going to take a really quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or visit andrewtemte.com for more information. And we're back with Susan Inouye, talking about mentorship, executive coaching, and Sawubona Leadership. Susan, let's suppose that you have a corporate CEO sitting in front of you right now. What's your advice to this individual about the benefits of what you refer to as cross-generational mentorship in their business? I assume that's getting people together from different generations and sharing their experiences.
Right. There's the law of requisite variety by W. Ross Ashby. He was one of the pioneers of cybernetics. And he said, in any ecosystem, the entity with the widest ranges of responses will thrive. And so I think that we know that having different perspectives from different generations is a good thing. Yet our ego starts to get in the way. And it is, it's hard for us when another generation, either older or younger than us, tries to tell us what to do.
Right.
And so I focus my execs not on so much on cross-generational mentoring, but on what we call gift-centered mentoring, because everyone is born with a gift to share with the world. And to every gift, there's what we call the other side to the gift, which is the blind spot, what we're blind to and need to learn. Yeah. Now, blind spots are not negative. They're a gift we don't have. And so a person can have the gift of planning, for example, and usually the other side to that gift is letting go and going with the flow. And if a person knows their gifts and they know their blind spots, they now know what they need to learn. And so it makes it easier for them to look for someone with that gift instead of focusing on people's age or ethnic background or gender, to find somebody who has that gift of flow, to see how flow shows up in the world, how a person with flow speaks, how they act. And so they're able then to develop that blind spot into a strength. So they have the capacity to do both. That when things don't go according to plan, they can head in another direction. Now, on the other side to this, which is interesting, you pick someone who sees the gifts in you that has flow and teaching you flow. Your gift, the mentee's gift, is the mentor's blind spot. So it can be very reciprocal.
Yeah.
And all of this, Andy, happens in a culture where we see and accept people for who they are. If we build that kind of culture, then people, and we see their gifts and we acknowledge it, people feel valued for who they are. And it's so much easier to have mentoring happen naturally or to create mentoring programs because people feel safe to be themselves.
I want to just ask you what may be the obvious question to some, and I'm going to go a little bit off script here,
Sure.
which is, what do you do with the gruff leader, the no-nonsense leader that says, oh, this just all sounds way too fluffy and squishy, get the work done? How do you bring them into this conversation?
If you said to me something more specific, I could ride on that. But let me share with you this. Most of the leaders who come to me, I won't call them leaders, executives, CFOs, whatever, that come to me have been told by their board, you are too rough with your people are complaining to you, you need to get a coach. And so the one thing that I don't do is make them wrong for being who they are. I start with, hey, you know what? You have gifts that have got you here. You're analytical, you're detail-oriented. And I can almost tell by what the position was, is what gifts they have. And when I start to name their gifts, they're going, wow, how do you know me this well? I said, because I've worked with people like you. I said, there's another side to the gift. which is the blind spot. So you're driven and determined and you want things to happen quick and fast. And what do you think the other side is? And they'll go, not being driven and determined. I said, no, I mean, okay. I mean, that's what they usually say. I said, it's slowing down. And I said, it's being patient and present. And they'll look at me and say, oh, yeah, I've been told that before.
Yeah.
I said, but what if you were able to be present and patient and build that into a strength? Now you have the capacity not to just go 180 miles an hour or zero. You have all these ranges in between. And they start to see it. And I said, then you're able to connect with your people. Then you're able to see what it is that they need. And I'll name something specific that they had a problem with. I said, so-and-so that complains that you never value her. As I said, it's because you never see her gifts in her. He goes, well, that's true. So I start with the goodness of who they are because it's important that I acknowledge them first. And then what's so beautiful about Sawubona Leadership, it just lends to this is another side. I'm not going to get rid of your gift. I'm just going to add something to it.
Yes. So thank you for that, Susan. I just wanted to,
Sure.
I was 92% sure that the answer was going to be that the strategy applies to everybody and nobody's excluded,
No.
irrespective of where your starting point is, which might be that gruff, matter-of-fact chief financial officer. I'm not trying to stereotype here, but we all know that individual in our lives. And so the system applies to everybody. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I am going to live Sawubona, I have to do it to the harshest of people.
Yeah.
And when I am gentle and kind with them, they have nothing to fight against.
Yeah. Susan, what haven't we talked about today that you want to be sure that our listeners hear? And then at the tail end of that, if you can tell us all how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I want to say is that, a lot of companies are going through tough times right now.
Yeah.
I know a lot of companies that are downsizing. But what I want to say is when we go through the toughest of times, it's not the time to cut the funds for developing your people. Because developing your people helps them to become innovative and creative and think of the next best thing that will take the company forward. And just real quick, I want to share because people go, well, we don't have any money. There was I worked with a senior vice president and a regional manager of a subsidiary of an international bank in 2010 when there was a downturn in the economy and bank had a sullied reputation. Her boss said, just wait it out, be patient. She said, I think there's something we can do. Her company put out the money for her to engage my services. And we did a lot of things, but bottom line, within a period of 6 months, her region increased their book of business by 50% in a downturn in the economy. By the end of 12 months, they were at 150% of their goals. And at the end of the year, they were the #1 region in the entire bank. So there is a direct connection between being the best of who you can be and helping people do that and increase in revenues and profitability.
Yeah, I'm a learning and development training guy. That's my background, and I've heard that over and over again in down economies. Well, we just don't have the money to train anybody, so this is gonna be the first thing that we're going to cut. Well, first of all, training and development should be lifelong. It should be ongoing. It should be continuous in your business. Sports professionals practice all the time. They learn all the time. Why shouldn't the people in your business be learning all the time? And then to add to that, when the business is down is when you should be doubling down on your learning and development agenda. So I know it's counterintuitive, but if I could give you a high five right now through the wires, I would, because that's exactly the answer.
Yeah.
So where can folks get a hold of you, Susan?
Okay, so they can get a hold of me. I'll say it and then I'll spell it out. susaninouye.com/BAP. So that's SUSANINOUYE.com/B as in balancing, A as in act, P as in podcast, BAP.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Let's have a little fun here at the end of the show. 3 lightning round questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, awesome. So you just won $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or a cause in general. Who do you pick?
Of course, Youth Mentoring Connection.
Of course.
In fact, of course, by the way, proceeds from the book are donated directly, have been forever donated to Youth Mentoring Connection.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is so fantastic.
Yeah.
So second question, I put you in a little bitty time machine. You can send a short message to an earlier version of yourself. What's the message and what previous version do you send it to?
I would send it to a 26-year-old Susan because my brain now is fully developed.
Yeah.
And I would say to her, you don't always have to push so hard to get what you want, that you can take your seat of power with grace, dignity, compassion, and a respect for other people's power while still honoring your own. And if you do that, you can attract things to you rather than always having to go after them.
I just love how you said, well, I'll send it to a 26-year-old version of myself because that's the version who's actually going to have the potential to listen.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We are, last question, we are all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
Yeah. I'm on a mission, Andy, to spread Sawubona Leadership to as many executives, business owners, managers as I possibly can, because our leadership is in a crisis today. I mean, we really don't have leaders. We have people in positions of power, and there is a difference.
Oh, yes.
And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And to be able to do this also and continuously engage in the practices that support me in living in my gifts and purpose and help others live in theirs.
Well, Susan, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's an absolute pleasure getting to know you and your story. We've created a lot of value here today, and I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, my name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends, your colleagues, and maybe a family member if you like them. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.